Welcome to Project and Base File Setup using InfraWorks data presented by Eric King from Michael Baker International. Eric is originally from Sheridan, Wyoming, and went to college at the Colorado School of Mines, where he received his Bachelor of Science in Civil Engineering. He now lives and works in Lakewood, Colorado, a suburb of Denver. Eric is married with 2 kids, a 2- and a 5-year-old, and his wife is also a civil engineer who works mostly in construction. In total, Eric has 17 years of civil engineering experience, mostly on highway and roadway design projects. From 2013 to 2017, the majority of his time was spent on redesigning roads that were destroyed during severe floods in northern Colorado. Today, Eric serves as the manager of the roadway design group for Michael Baker International, where his work consists of project management, proposals, and high-level design support and guidance on projects. Eric believes today's presentation is perfect for projects such as corridor studies, route alternatives, or proposals in which you are early on in the process and don't have a lot of existing data such as ground survey. Using data from InfraWorks and local GIS open source websites can quickly create background files needed for design. My name is Nolan Wagner, and I'll be assisting with Q&A moderation and have a few housekeeping notes before we get started. First, a big shout out to all of the sponsors of the event for helping make this virtual workshop happen. Thank you. An evaluation link will be provided at the end of the session, as well as a larger email at the end of the day. Please complete the evaluation to help us improve our event in the future. Evaluation completion is also necessary to qualify for PDHs. Now let's start today's session.
Good evening, everyone, or I guess maybe it's morning or afternoon, or maybe it's evening where you are. You never can tell these days. People all over the country. My name is Eric King, and I'm here to give you a presentation on setting up AutoCAD files using InfraWorks if you're doing a project such as like a planning study or for a proposal, that type of thing, where you don't necessarily have survey data or data from other type of source that you can use for your project. A little bit more about myself. I'm actually originally a microstation user. I know, boo, right? So yeah, I spent most of my career doing microstation, but every once in a while I get on a project with AutoCAD, and these are a couple tips and tricks that I found using InfraWorks and AutoCAD. There are some things I definitely like AutoCAD a lot more. You know, the InfraWorks version of the software I find is a little bit better than the Bentley Concept Station version, so that works really well for me. I do a lot of proposals in my job, and a lot of like planning studies, that type of thing. So it is helpful to be able to get some data, some, I guess in this case, free outsourced data from other places versus going out and spending the money on survey. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen, and I will jump right into getting this project set up. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Sorry about that. So I guess one of the things that I find with you know, InfraWorks and Concept Station is, you know, you create this great big model. Yeah, it looks cool, but then what do you do with it? A lot of the times what you're actually trying to produce is something in plans, something that you can print. For any of you that have ever used InfraWorks or Concept Station, you know that there really isn't much presentation that you can do with these types of programs. You can take screenshots, you can export images, you can do videos, but if your end goal is to actually create a plan set, it doesn't really help you out all that much to use something like InfraWorks. And I mean, there's a lot of data out there. You can get GIS information, GIS shape files, but then you need to make sure that you understand what you're looking for as far as your coordinate systems. With coordinate systems, obviously you can end up in any part of the world or any part of the country. A lot of people, that's kind of the hindering factor for them. They don't truly understand what coordinate system they're working on, and sometimes they get data from different sections, and things just aren't lining up correctly. let's see. So to create first off, if you're trying to create a base file using InfraWorks, you have to create an area that you're going to be doing your study or your proposal using InfraWorks. In this case, I happen to live in Denver, or Lakewood, a suburb of Denver. So I'm going to show you a little bit of an area that's around my neck of the woods. So if we just go to InfraWorks and open up the model builder, we can search to Denver, Colorado, United States. Zoom in and look at the area that we know that we want to do our project. This just so happens to be an area where I know there's going to have an upcoming project. You can enter in whatever model name you want. For this thing, I'm going to call it ACEC presentation, and then create your model. InfraWorks then sends you an email telling you that your model's done. I've actually already created this one just to save a little bit of time. Normally it doesn't really take all that long. But yeah, as you can see, it pulls in all sorts of data, roadways, buildings, existing roads, has some different color shapes for different land covers. And all this stuff is great, but again, at the end of the day, we're trying to get it into AutoCAD. The conversion from InfraWorks into AutoCAD is actually pretty simple. All you have to do is go up to your settings and say export to IMX. IMX is the type of file that you can create using InfraWorks to get into AutoCAD. When you first create your model, it automatically brings in all the different layers that I mentioned before. You can see all the different types of data that you have by opening up your data sources catalog. As you can see, there is a lot of stuff in here. And when you export your InfraWorks model to an IMX and bring it into CAD, this is a lot of stuff, and it's a lot of things that could potentially make your computer crash, and then honestly, a lot of things that you're just going to not end up needing when you create the Civil 3D model. So one of the things that you can do is if you're going to be coming back to this, it's always nice to save a copy of this model space that has all of your data. You can go in and make different copies of it so that you can always come back. You can make another copy. Just call it existing ground export. And while that's loading, you can go in, or after that's loaded, I'm sorry, you can go in and delete all of the things that you probably don't think you're going to need. I don't need waterways. I don't need other roads. I don't need the ground. I don't need these coverage areas or buildings, and you can delete all that info from your model. What you're really looking to get into, oops, and sorry, you probably don't need railways either. What you're really trying to get out of this program is just the existing ground terrain. That's the biggest thing that you're missing to be able to start doing your modeling in any of your work in AutoCAD. And before you save this, one of the biggest things that you need to do is make sure that you know which coordinate system that you're working in, so that way you can start bringing in all your data and having it line up in the same place in the world. You can do that by going into the model properties. This tells you, if you're working in metric or English, and the default terrain, or I'm sorry, the default coordinate system, oftentimes is a coordinate system, usually fairly local to where you are. In this case, I was on this UTM 84 13N coordinate system. A lot of the available information in the Denver area is actually this Colorado 83 central system. So I went ahead and changed that to this, changed my roadway design standards to be in English, or I'm sorry, imperial, instead of metric. And then also when you make those changes, it doesn't actually take effect in your model until you save and close out. So make sure you save and close out before you start exporting your model. Once we've got our model set up to having just the existing ground terrain, and this is what we want to bring into our AutoCAD file, Like I mentioned before, you can go up to the settings and just say export to IMX. Go ahead and make sure that your target coordinate system is the same as the one you're working in, and then go ahead and pick a location where you want to save your file. I'm just going to call it existing ground. If you wanted to pick a specific area that you wanted to export, you could draw in a polygon or a box or a shape for that specific area. In this case, I want to export the entire model to bring into AutoCAD. Then all you have to do is click export. As you can see, I've done this once before, trying to get all my files set up. So in this case, I'm going to replace it. And boom, because it's not a very big file, there's not a whole lot of other information like the existing roads, it's a pretty quick export. So now that I'm done with that, I can go into AutoCAD. One of the first things that you want to do in AutoCAD is to set your AutoCAD file in the same coordinate system that you're using in InfraWorks. Not a whole lot of people mess around with the coordinate systems in AutoCAD. They typically just leave it as unspecified in your tool space. Most of the time that's okay, that you're not bringing in a whole lot of different information, so it typically doesn't matter. But you can set that coordinate system by going into the settings tab of your tool space and going on into the right-clicking on the drawing settings for the file. And it's popping up on my other screen. And again, when you first open up this file, it probably says no projection, no datum. I've gone ahead and clicked on USA, Colorado, which is where I'm at, and then selected that same 83 Colorado State Plains Central Zone and US foot at CO83CF, which is the same one that I selected in my InfraWorks model. So once you select that, you can click OK. Again, I've got nothing else in my file here. And it's a pretty simple import to bring in your InfraWorks model that you just exported as an IMX. All you need to do is go up to the InfraWorks tab. If you have InfraWorks loaded on your machine, I believe that this tab will automatically show up. And then you just simply click Import IMX. And then go and find the existing ground model that you just created and click. And boom, just like that, it brings in the existing ground surface of your InfraWorks model. Again, this isn't the biggest surface in the world, so it was pretty quick. I have found that you can do pretty large areas and bring it into your files. If you have a seed file with all of the layers and configurations that you like to use for whatever workspace that your client's working in, you can start out with that as your seed file. So when you bring it in, you can go ahead and set your all of your surface properties with all the styles and layers that you like to use. Again, this is just an out-of-the-box file that I'm using for this demonstration. Let's see, you can go ahead and change your contours to display any way you like. Then one of the other great things about working in a file with a coordinate system is you can see that my geolocation tab is actually highlighted. If you are working in a file that does have a coordinate system and you are actually logged in with your Autodesk account, this is one thing that a lot of people don't actually do when they start working in AutoCAD. If you're using the cloud licenses, or if you use any of the automated features for updating your software, in the lower right-hand corner of your toolbar on your desktop, you can load the Autodesk little app here that shows you all the programs that you have and everything that you can update. If you are logged into this, then one of the great things that you can do is you can actually turn on aerial on and off to be able to have an aerial background as well in your file. So without having to go in and download aerial tiles or anything like that, you can just load this to use as your backdrop for your files. So now I've got contours and I've got aerial. I'm already halfway there to being able to start laying out my design. One of the good things about this aerial is that it's very quick and easy to access. One of the bad things is it's not as customizable to use this aerial. Um, it auto-populates, I believe it's a Microsoft Bing aerial map. It's pretty up to date as well. One of the things that you can do is if you wanted to create a snapshot of the aerial so that you can manipulate the transparency or anything like that, you can do a clip of that, click the area that you want, and then turn the map off. And now you've got a snapshot of just that aerial. Now you can go in and start doing things like adjusting the transparency if you don't want it to shine up as bright, or the brightness or the contrast, all things that you can do um, to make that aerial look nicer or to look the way you want it. In my case, I typically like to go in and find aerial from other sources, something to bring in that's a little bit more high resolution. I use Nearmap for a lot of the aerials that I bring in. You can either use this the aerial that I just showed you, or you can bring in aerial from Nearmap, for example. A lot of the things that people typically do is if they have an aerial image, they bring it in through the XREFs, where they can just attach an image. One of the bad things about this is bringing it in like this doesn't recognize the coordinate system. If you go up to raster tools and insert, you can actually grab a georeferenced aerial image versus just a TIFF or a JPEG that's not georeferenced, that you'd have to set where that location is. Georeference, again, automatically brings something in where you want it. And again, I downloaded these aerials in that same Colorado Central State Plane coordinate system. So as you can see now, I have even a higher resolution aerial that, again, I can click on and manipulate any way that I want and create an aerial XREF base file to save and to reference into my sheets. For this drawing, I'll just go ahead and turn this off for now, or in this case, detach it. But yeah, just a couple different options of bringing aerial into your files as well. Okay, so yeah, well, once you bring that in, then you can save this. You can start doing creating your data shortcuts the same way that you would set up the design in any of your other sheets. Okay, now let's see. One of the other things that I use this for, if you do a lot of work in InfraWorks, such as proposals or graphics for public meetings or anything like that, one of the things that I find never ends up looking quite the way that I want it is an existing ground near a bridge. If I go back to my master file here, as just an example, you can see that InfraWorks brought in a small bridge over a canal that has a drainage ditch going through it. You can see that that is definitely not what I wanted the existing ground to look like in this area. And if this is an area that I was proposing a new bridge or creating a graphic for, I wouldn't want to show an existing ground that looks like this. So if you're setting up AutoCAD files to actually produce a plan set off of, that's one thing. Or if you want to just manipulate data to then bring back into InfraWorks, that's another great tool to use Civil 3D to manipulate that surface. I won't go through the entire exercise of how you would want to do that, but if you bring in your existing ground surface, in this case, this is that area that had that small bridge and channel going through it. I do know that I want more of a defined channel in this area, so I drew in some break lines and added those to my surface to create more of an actual channel shape underneath that bridge. All you have to do is make sure that your file is saved. And then you can go back to your InfraWorks tab, and then this time, instead of saying import IMX, you can say export IMX. It asks you where you want to save that file. It automatically saves it in the default location of where your file is located. asks you what version. I typically do the version 2.1. And just like that, it exports your surface into an IMX that can then be imported into AutoCAD. One thing that I forgot to show you is back when we had our InfraWorks file that did have all of these items. If we were to export to an IMX with all of this data as shown right here, you'd end up with an AutoCAD file that looks like this. It tries to create an alignment for every single for every single roadway that your InfraWorks model tried to create by default. So in this case, every single parking lane in a parking lot, every single side road, every single alley. It brings in, it tries to bring in the shapes of buildings, which you don't necessarily need. Sometimes it's kind of nice, but they're not always accurate and up to date. It created alignments for cul-de-sacs. So yeah, a lot of stuff that you'd end up having to delete out of your file. So it's nice to just delete it out of InfraWorks beforehand versus trying to delete it all out of Civil 3D after you bring it in. Sorry about that. So yeah, back in InfraWorks, now that we have created our file from AutoCAD, again, we can go in and create another, actually I already created one here called Existing Ground Modified. This is just a copy of our master model. You can see that there is a terrain here. We want to go ahead and remove that terrain out of our file. What that does is it flattens all of the data that we have in. These are all of our planning level roads and water surfaces. But again, you can see that the buildings are actually already snapped to the surface when they were imported. So we can bring in the IMX that created from AutoCAD by just importing IMX in our Data Sources tab and browsing to our folder. Export, and I called this, oops, sorry. Oh, I saved it under CAD, sorry, under Surface Fix. And when you bring it in, a lot of the times it doesn't automatically configure, so you have to go in and configure the file. In this case, all I want to bring in is the existing ground modified surface that I created. Oops, so I want to make sure that's the only one checked. Hit close and refresh. And then if we zoom back to that location, you can see for that small area where I went in and adjusted the surface, now you can see it looks more like you would expect a nice well-defined channel. Okay. So once you're working in AutoCAD, you've got your existing ground surface in there, and you can go in and start laying out your corridors, any of the design that you're looking to do. And if, say, you did want to create some graphics from the work that you're doing in AutoCAD in InfraWorks, you can also export items back from AutoCAD back into InfraWorks. It's not a straight update back and forth. If you make something in AutoCAD and bring it into InfraWorks, they don't necessarily read each other live. You do have to do an export from Autodesk, or I'm sorry, from AutoCAD back into InfraWorks whenever you want that new change to be updated. Again, here we just have a corridor. Whenever you export to an IMX, you have to make sure and hit save first. And again, we'll do the same thing here. Export to IMX. Where do you want to save this? It's going to save it in that same folder, save it as version 2.1, and it saves. And it always just saves as the default name of your drawing. So again, if we wanted to create another model space in our InfraWorks for our all of our new work, I've gone ahead and created another working area in here called Updated Model. Sorry, it always takes a minute to load from space to space. And in this version, I deleted out the aerial that InfraWorks brought in and brought in that same near map aerial, which I brought into AutoCAD earlier. As you can see, it's a much brighter, crisper image than what was brought into InfraWorks automatically. Similar to how we brought in the existing ground surface that we modified down near that bridge, we can bring in our corridor the same way. So we want to go back and bring in the Autodesk IMX. Here's our corridor file that we exported earlier. And it's asking you, what do you want to import? Well, the surface is already in there. I don't need to do that. I just want to bring in the corridor that I laid out in AutoCAD. So once you bring it in, a lot of people get frustrated because they bring it in and nothing happens. The file says that it's configured. But in most cases, when you bring in these types of files, you have to go to the configure and just close and refresh it to get it to update in the model. And there you can see there's the corridor that we laid out. Again, you can start manipulating it. You can add different side conditions and fill slopes, that sort of thing, to make it look like whatever you want. Okay, what else do I have here? So yeah, that is the majority of my presentation. Some of the other things that you can do too, there's a lot of outsourced data out there. The City and County of Denver, for example, you can go onto their city website and download additional GIS information. Again, InfraWorks has additional, all sorts of files that it recognizes. Again, shape files you can bring in. In this case, I downloaded GIS files from their website. When you bring in GIS files again, it's going to ask you for all that same information. You know, where am I at? I'm in the, assuming that it's in the same coordinate system. I only want to see the parcels that are actually clipped to my model. I don't need to see them for the entire city. I'm going to bring in some parcels. So you want to label them as such. And I want them to show up as a thick yellow line, so it makes it nice and easy to see. That's usually a pretty quick update here, and still refreshing. Sorry about that, but yeah, now you can see all the parcels that are brought in. You can do something similar. Again, I've taken the parcel file and using either MicroStation or ArcGIS, you can convert those to CAD files and bring in that same shape file into AutoCAD. And those are usually the main things that you're looking for when you're laying out planning studies or different alternate routes for different corridors. Is you need the existing ground, and you typically want to know where the right-of-way lines are. All right, well, thank you very much, everyone. Again, I'm definitely not a pro at either InfraWorks or AutoCAD. These are just some things that I've found over the last couple years working on projects where I didn't have the best information out of the box, and trying to figure out how I can get that quick and easy. I'm not the most patient person in the world, so relying on different sub-consultants that use GIS to get me this data, download aerials, get topography and convert it using ArcGIS. There's a lot quicker and more efficient ways out there to just do it yourself sometimes, which is what I've always found to be the most efficient. With that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to questions. Thank you very much.